Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're gonna start another series, a reading vlog. I think this will be the third one I'll upload this year. I already have done the Southern Reach trilogy by Jeff Vandermeer, and I think I will do the She Who Became the Sun duology before this one as well, even though I haven't filmed that yet, but it is a significantly shorter series than the one we're talking about today, and that is Liveship Traders by Robin Hobb. So I will start Ship of Magic. I have actually started it already. I'm about probably 1% in. The audiobook is 35 hours, so this will take a while, but I'm very excited. I really enjoyed the first trilogy in the realm of the Elderlings, so I am intrigued to read the second one. I have heard a couple of things about it, but I try not to let it get into the forefront of my mind. I want to go in as blind as possible, just enjoy what's coming. I'm very, very excited to talk to you all about this series. I think it's going to be so much fun. But yeah, I have pretty much no knowledge about this apart from the fact that this is about a different part of the world in Realm of the Elderlings from the first series. And we're looking at people who make ships out of this magical wood. And if I think 3 captains die on the ship, then the ship will come alive. And this is about like seafarer, pirates, all of that. I'm very excited, and the way this works is that I will always update you when I'm halfway through one of the books and then when I have finished the book, and so we discuss the series as I go, and I hope you're ready for it. I'm ready for it, so let's go. So I'm now halfway through Ship of Magic, and I think it is time for an update, but where do I even begin? This is a very long book, so a lot has happened by now, and I will try to give you a quick overview of what this book is actually about. So, in this one, basic premise I already told you is that we have live ships, and these are ships made of a special wood. And when 3 captains die on the ship, then it becomes alive, it quickens. And so one of the perspectives we are following is focused on the family of the Vestrits and mainly Althea. And Althea is the daughter of a captain who is now ill and will probably die very soon, and if he dies on his ship, he will be the 3rd captain, and so the ship will quicken. The ship is called the Vivacia, and ever since Althea has been a small child, she has been sailing with her father on the Vivacia, and she's very sure that she will be the heir to the ship. And she has a very strong bond with the ship as well and sees herself as the future captain. But things turn out quite differently for her. In this storyline, we also get a good look at Kyle, who is the brother-in-law of Althea. So she has an older sister, and Kyle married that sister. Now, the parents, so Althea's parents, had a very equal relationship, but basically they were specializing in the things they were interested in. So Althea's father was the one who sailed the ship and did all the trading, and then the mother, she had all of the land holdings and made sure that the land side of their business was doing well. And so Althea's sister Caphria grew up helping the mother quite a bit because Althea was on the ship, and for her it was all just too much work, and she decided she wanted to marry a man who would do everything for her so she can just sit back and relax and doesn't have any responsibility, basically. And so she married Kyle, and Kyle is a big fat ass. You realize that very quickly in the beginning of the book. Kyle is the current captain of the Vivacia, while Althea is still on board. But they have a very strained relationship, probably because Kyle knows that a lot of the crew are looking up to Althea and also consider her the future owner and captain of the ship, and he thinks it is his right as the man in the family to be the captain and the owner of the ship. So he is just a very mean bitch, to be honest. So yeah, we have that whole like family storyline. But we do get some other perspectives as well. One that is still quite close to this is Brashen, who was also from a trader family, but he didn't have like the best approach to life for a while, and so he got disowned and then was taken up as ship's crew by Althea's father. So he feels very connected to the Vestrid family, but he also is someone that Kyle targets because he feels threatened by him. And then we do have other perspectives that at first glance are a bit more separate. So we have Windrow, who is the son of Kyle, who at the beginning of the book is in a monastery where he was sent to be kind of like a monk. But he is called back because his grandfather is so sick and they expect him to die, so he has to leave the monastery where he felt very, very welcome and belonging. I don't know what that was. But he felt like he really belonged there, and he has to leave that to go back to his family, and he never really had like a great connection to them. But because of how things turn out, he will be forced to go back into all the family shenanigans, and he's not happy about it. And then we do have a quite separate point of view, and that is Kenneth. Kenneth is the captain of a pirate ship, and he is trying to become king of the pirates, which, I can only think of One Piece when I hear that line. But, he wants to kind of show the pirates that they could be a much greater force if they had someone who would guide them. So he wants to bring some order into the chaos so they can be more successful. And the pirates are a little bit apprehensive of that. But at the beginning of the book, we see that Kyle is on this very weird island which has this like magical beach. And there is something called the Other, which is kind of like a maritime life form, I guess. And they do like little prophecies. And so his prophecy is something like that he will get what he's wishing for, something like that. And so he thinks he's gonna achieve it, and we follow him on his way. And it's really interesting because he has this, like, I don't know if it's his first mate or something, this older man. and basically Kenneth is like, yeah, I want to achieve like greatness, and I think this is the way to go. And then the older man is like, well, nobody's gonna support you, so we'll have to make a deal. So whenever we do something towards your goal, we will also do something towards my goal, because that will sit well with the people. And so basically Kenneth's idea is really stupid, and he agrees to the deal. So whenever they do something that the first mate said they should do, it goes really well. And it's like so funny to me, the like way this works out. We have one more perspective that I haven't quite figured out yet. I do think that they are the others. It's something in the sea, and we get like very, very few glimpses. Like there's only a chapter like here and there. I don't know, in the first half of the book, maybe 3 chapters or something. It's very, very rare. We see that they are migrating, so they leave the waters where they lived and they go somewhere else. But really, it's like I don't understand anything. Whenever like their chapters pop up, I'm like, oh yeah, right, they existed as well, because so far we don't know what this is all about. This is like roughly what is happening in this book. Now, the first part of the book, we focus a lot on the Vestrid family, and we focus a lot on the land side of things. So we see what happens with this family when their like father and captain and whatnot, when he passes away. We see how the family starts falling apart. So this is very, very hard to read. There's a lot of misogyny in this part. Kyle really is such an asshole, so be prepared for that. He really thinks just because he's the man, he can say what's going on now, while he has these three formidable, more or less, like Caffrey is still on her way, but like women who are truly this family. And I'm very intrigued to see where that goes, but as I said, for the first half, there's so much misogyny in those chapters. And as I said, I love the whole dynamic with Kenneth and his crew. Very excited to see where that goes. There will probably be more crossovers with the other storylines after this halfway point. But we'll see about that. Yeah, I would say in the first half, definitely this family drama and all of the like pain and grief and anger. There's a lot of like fights. So you have to be prepared for that. And then around the 45% mark, we do have a time jump. So I'm not quite sure where we started off, like somewhere in the spring, I guess. And then we jump into the autumn. And so now all of our characters are in different places, and we get way more of the seafaring side of things. At this moment, both Wintrow and Althea are on ships, and we follow their journeys, basically. And I do really like Wintrow. I think he's a very interesting character because he's very smart. He has so much empathy, but then also he is very innocent and wants to believe in the good of people. And now he's in a setting where people are not that great to each other, and yeah, it's like really hard to see him like struggle, but then also trying to fit in because he knows that things will just get worse if he doesn't fit in. With Wintrow, we see a lot of cruelty, a lot of bullying. People are really, really awful towards him because he is not like the manly man. And that's also very hard to read because we can see that he has such a beautiful soul, but he's treated so badly. So in that sense, it is a little bit like fits. But I think I like Wintrow a tiny little bit more. Not quite sure, but there's definitely similarities there. And then with Althea, she's also on a ship, and with her storyline especially, but also a little bit with Wintrow's, we now had quite a bit of like animal cruelty. So again, some things that are very hard to read. We see a hunt on, I don't know, I don't know English names for animals, but like basically, I have no idea. I'm so sorry. I will try to add the word somewhere. But yeah, definitely some hunting scenes, some slaughter scenes. And then also there is a scene with a bear that is held in captivity for some kind of like an attraction. Definitely something that occurs quite a bit in this story as well. So that's basically where I am. I am enjoying the book. I definitely think that Robin Hobb has a writing style where even though it is lengthy, it doesn't really bother me. It's not like there's a ton of things happening, but you can see the slow build-up of things, and you can start to try to figure out where everything is gonna go and how certain things might connect. One thing I also wanted to mention is that a theme that is especially prevalent before that time jump, but will probably pop up again now, is slave trade. So we see that this town where the Westrid family lives, they have this very mysterious background story as well that we don't really know too much about yet. There's also a very mysterious figure that just showed up a couple of chapters ago where I'm intrigued to see what that side of things is gonna be. But this town, they do not allow slavery, but because it has become more normal in certain areas, they lose their trade because they don't have the kind of cheap labor force to be competitive with the other areas of this region that use slaves. And so they're kind of in a pickle because they don't want to use slaves, but at the same time that might be their downfall because everyone else is doing it. And so we also see some of the like political sides of that, but obviously reading about slavery from the potential slavers' point of view is not very pleasant, and we do get a wide range of opinions on that. Again, not looking at Kyle or anything, but yeah, some of our characters are questionable in that regard at best. So I am intrigued to see where those discussions go, but I just wanted to mention that slave trade and slavery is a very big part of this story, and so far it does not seem to be very racially charged. It is more the kind of slavery where people just get into debt, and if they can't pay their debt, then they are slaves. But still, yeah, very, very difficult topic, and I think that it will be handled well, but not everyone is interested in reading about that, and I can totally understand that, so I wanted to mention it here, that this is a very, very prevalent theme in the book. I'm gonna read the second half of the book, which will probably take me another week or two, and then I'll let you know how that first book went for me. So today I'm back because I finished A Ship of Magic last night, and I thought it is time we discuss it. Now, I did enjoy this book, but if I compare it to the other books by Robin Hobb that I have read, I did like it less. So I gave it 4 stars, but I think that I expected it to be better. I think that with this book, you definitely realize how long it is. At least to me, it did feel quite long, and it is quite long, to be honest. So yeah, I enjoyed this book, but it's definitely not my favorite by the author. Also, I don't know if I mentioned this already, but the audiobook narrator really does a very creepy job. It's not very good. There are like words that will never leave my head again because it is so creepy. Like the way she sometimes reads these names like Althea and Vivacia. This is gonna be stuck in my head forever. Like I don't know. So I would not recommend the audiobooks, but since I started The Realm of the Elderlings on audio, I didn't want to like mix it up now. So I will continue with the audiobooks as well. But just so you have been warned, because I have been warned before and I very much appreciated that, because otherwise I would have been quite shocked to get into this one. But quality-wise, I think a lot is going on in this book. We do have multiple perspectives, which is not the case with the first trilogy in The Realm of the Elderlings, so that's definitely something different. And I do think that it is used well. I do think that these different perspectives definitely add something to the story. We also have one perspective that is more mysterious, where we actually don't really know who we're really following. We just know it is some kind of creature that is in the water, but it's not really clear who they are. So I thought that was quite interesting. I always like a POV where you don't really know what's going on and how it fits with the others. But towards the end of the book, that definitely gets clearer and you start to understand what's going on there. So I did really enjoy that. And I think that, I was just really intrigued by the way these POVs would all kind of converge during the book and then in the series in general, because for now we can definitely see all of these connections, but not all of the characters have met. So I'm definitely intrigued to see also how that will evolve with the rest of the books. So I do think that there is definitely a lot of plot, a lot of character development, but then something I really struggled with this book is that the characters are all a little bit stupid, and some people might say that this makes the book quite realistic, and it definitely has like a realistic edge to it, especially if you consider that most of these characters really don't have like a lot of education. So yeah, they are realistic, but it still makes it a little bit frustrating to read at points, because you see how a lot of these characters like never consider the consequences of their actions. They're like very in the moment kind of characters, and then later on they're like, oh no, this is the consequence of what I did. Or in the case of Malta, just being like, there is no consequence ever to what I do because my daddy will save me. But it just, it got a little bit much. And I realized the character that I really liked in this book is Brashen, because he does sometimes consider the consequences of his actions, or at least he doesn't act surprised when these consequences occur, but he just deals with it. And that was quite refreshing, because a lot of these other characters are just like stumbling around being surprised. So that is something that I definitely struggled with a little bit more, because I think also in the Farseer trilogy, the first one in The Realm of the Elderlings, that wasn't really the case. Like there were some really smart people, and obviously those were like the higher ups, the like royalty people, and there were just like some like political machinations in place, which I really enjoy. Like I love a good political intrigue in my books, and so I feel like here that was lacking, and so it had more of the adventure feel, but like all of these characters just fell into their adventures kind of, and then never really knew how to deal with it. So it wasn't my favorite, but I'm intrigued to see how that continues on. We do have one character who has a great arc. He's also stumbling a lot, but I was feeling for every step of the way, and that is Wintro, and I really liked what he did at the end of the book. I think that he made a big leap and in his development, and so I'm very intrigued to see where it goes with him. Now, one character I want to love but I have a very hard time is Althea. I think that I want to like her because her storyline is kind of like this more feminist thing where she wants her ship and she is not like a girly girl and stuff, but it just, there is something just not really vibing, even though I also liked where her storyline left off at the end of the book. I did enjoy that, but I feel like her character is not really growing up in the way that I want her to. She does make some mistakes and she does realize them, so that's good, but now I want to see her actions reflect that she realized that. So that's my overall thoughts. I did like it. I did like the plot. I did like all of the strings that we can see and just trying to figure out how it's all gonna fit together in the end. But the characters themselves were just a little bit frustratingly real in a lot of the instances, and there is a lot of dark stuff talked about in this, mainly slavery and violence and a lot of like misogyny. Kyle is a real charmer, so yeah, be prepared if you want to go into this. I've also heard that there is other stuff in the second book that is also quite dark and like content warning worthy, so we'll see about that. But I am enjoying it. I will take a little bit of a break now just because these characters, I'm not ready for another 30 hours with them. But I will pick up the second book soon. So for all of the people who have read the book, I just want to talk a few spoilers now. And if you have not read the book yet, then you can use the chapters to jump over this part to my spoiler-free thoughts on the second book. Okay, where do I even start with the spoilers? There's so much going on in this book. I think one thing that I found very intriguing is the underwater storyline that we get. At the beginning, I thought maybe they were like these others that Kenneth visited in his first scene on the beach. But we find out that it is actually the sea serpents. And this is something I'm very, very intrigued by, because we can see that there is something going on, like they are actually very smart and they can communicate. And there is something going on with them and the live ships. So I'm very, very intrigued to see where that goes, especially with the way we end that storyline. We see that these serpents only have like very fragmented memories of like the greater thing of their lives, basically. So I'm intrigued to see where that goes. It's very, very, very interesting to me. And then another thing that definitely stands out is our favorite characters, Kyle and Malta. Now these two are definitely ones where I'm intrigued to see where they go, because Kyle is such an asshole, let's be real. And I know that people just, you know, learn things and stuff, but he hates women. He does. And the only woman he appreciates is Malta for some reason, even though she has all the traits that he should hate. Like, she's a pain in the ass. But yeah, Kyle is such a horrible person. And we do see him regret some of his decisions in the end. But there's like this monologue that we get also towards the end where he is like blaming all of his problems on other people, as always, as he does. That's him in a nutshell. And he's like, I'm so calm. Usually even a storm can't break my calm. And I'm like, yeah, bro. Yeah, you're the picture of calmness all the time, for sure. And only Winthrop is the reason you get angry. So yeah, Kyle is just interesting. But we see that he has a very big status loss in this book. Like, it happens gradually, but then at the end it happens like for sure when he loses his ship. And basically the only reason he's alive is Winthrop. So I am intrigued to see where it goes. I don't know if I remember correctly, but I seem to recall that people said that he becomes more likable in the other books and that his character development is written really well. So if I remember that correctly, I'm very intrigued to see that. And with Malta, I'm also very intrigued because she is slowly but surely digging her own grave and then just making other people responsible for it, which she definitely learned from her father. And so she now has to accept the courting of the Rainwild boy, man, whatever he is. So yeah, I'm intrigued because it would be really fun if like she's so materialistic that she just says fuck it in the end and takes him for jewels or something. I don't know, because so far that's the route we're on. But she definitely thinks she's so much more clever than anyone else. And I guess that is kind of relatable, because if you're like a 14-year-old kid, you probably think that, and it's probably not true. So yeah, Malta is definitely interesting as well. As I said before, with Althea, I do struggle a little bit to connect with her, even though I really want to. But she also has a lot of like this entitlement, which just grates on me a little bit. So I do think that it is interesting that she has to fight for what she thinks she's entitled to in this series, and that it is because she's a woman. So that is definitely an interesting choice, but still I feel like she should like learn things about the world a little bit faster. So I'm very intrigued because right now she has been discovered as a woman and not a boy on that other life ship. So we'll see where that goes. She also had this like super weird moment with Russian, which made me feel so uncomfortable. Like, why do these two have sex when they're drunk and drugged? I don't understand this scene, but it was the 90s, and the 90s was a wild time. So yeah, that was weird, but I do like them together. Like I said, I really like Russian, and so I did like them together. But then at the end there, we also see another potential love interest for Althea. So intrigued to see where that goes, if we will get some weird like triangle or something, or whether it will get resolved in a more grown-up fashion. I'm also intrigued very much about Vivacia because she, with the sea serpents, they say she has the scent of the one who knows, I think it's what they call her. So they have this kind of like mother god-like creature they're looking for who remembers everything. And if they don't find that creature, then they will forget that they have ever been anything else than just hungry sea serpents. That opens up this whole question of what the hell are these life ships actually made of? And we have that question as well with the Amber character, I think, and with Paragon. So yeah, Paragon, I feel so much for him, and I'm so intrigued to see how he will fit into everything as well. So there is so much emotion, and I'm just really intrigued to see where it goes. I'm just not prepared right now for the tediousness to start the next book with all of these characters stumbling through their world again. Let's just keep it at that. So last but not least, Winthrop. I love Winthrop. I really want to see him succeed. I'm very intrigued to see how he will now play into Kenneth's game. I also really like Kenneth. I think he's a very interesting character. I love Edda. I think she's a very interesting character. And these are the more like morally ambiguous characters that we don't really know how it will play out, because they do have more like mean ideas of what they want to achieve, like very selfish ideas, but at the same time they are doing good stuff. So I think I'm gonna leave it at that, just because I don't want this video to be as long as the audiobooks of this series are, but definitely let me know which are your favorite characters. I think if I would have to sit down right now and say who my favorite characters are, then it would probably be Russian, Winthrop, and Kenneth? We'll see. Not quite sure. But yeah, I'm definitely intrigued, and I will definitely continue reading this series. And I'll update you once I'm halfway through the second book. So I'm now halfway through the Mad Ship, and it is time for an update. So I must say that I enjoyed this second book way more than I enjoyed the first book. In the first book we obviously had to meet all of the characters first, and there was a lot of like world building. And the thing that I didn't really love about the first book is that a lot of these characters don't really make very smart choices. A lot of the choices, I would say, were really dumb. And so a lot of the messes our characters got themselves into were also pretty much self-made. And some of these characters are really horrible, but they're not like traditional villains. They're just not great people. And I think in the second book we do get a little bit more of a clear-cut villain, or just a force to go against for our characters, but then there's still like a lot of other stuff going on. At the end of the first book, there is something like very dramatic happening, but it took until the halfway point of this book for the characters that are kind of affected by that to actually know about it, just because this world is so big. So for news to get to them, it just took quite some time. But now we're at the point where like everyone knows what has happened, and our characters are getting on their way to do something about it. So I'm definitely very excited for the second half of this book. I think it's going to be very interesting to follow that journey and to see kind of which alliances will get made because of that. Because I'm excited for like two particular characters meeting, because I'm not quite sure where that would go. I think for the characters, we still have the same set of characters that we had in the first book. We do get some additional POVs and some additional characters. I think the most noteworthy is a perspective that has to do with the satrap, which is basically the ruler of this land. So that is so far like very few chapters, but very impactful chapters, I would say. So definitely intrigued to see where that is going. We can see all of the storms brewing, and I think that now that I have crossed the halfway points, a few of the lightnings will probably start hitting. And I don't know where I'm going with this metaphor, but you know. So overall, I am having a very good time. The narrator of the audiobooks still isn't great, but either I have become more accustomed to her reading style, or she's actually gotten a little bit better with the second book. I'm not quite as horrified by the audiobook anymore, so that's good news as well. I think I'm gonna keep this update nice and short and then talk more about it once I have finished the book. But bottom line is, I'm really enjoying my time. I'm glad to see these characters again. Some of these characters already got a little bit of what they deserve after book one, so definitely intrigued to see that progress. There's one character in particular, Malta, where I'm just like so intrigued to see where her character development goes. So we'll see. All the good stuff, all the like plotting and all the like maneuvering of these characters now. I'll let you know how the rest of the book goes. So I finished reading Mad Ship, and with that we're 2/3 of the way through this series. I did like this book a lot better than the first one. I decided to give it around 4.5 stars, but it's more like a 4.25, I guess. Not quite sure, but I definitely liked it more than the first book. I think that the plot was just a little bit more, I don't know, straightforward. It was clear what the characters wanted to achieve. We could like see their goals and that they thought about the things they were doing, which was something they didn't really do in the first book, I would say. So yeah, definitely enjoyed the second book. We get some new perspectives, which I really appreciated. We get a lot of answers as well about the world and how this world works. So that was very much appreciated and very interesting as well. Definitely very imaginative, and I am intrigued to see where that goes now, because something quite big happened at the end of this book. And it could go either way. It could help our characters or make their lives even harder. So I'm intrigued to see where that goes, definitely. I will take a little bit of a break before I read the last book now. This has strategic reasons because of a readathon I'm doing right now, and this last book with its 900 pages is just a little bit too long for a readathon. But then also, most of these characters right now are at a point where I'm like, I like where you are right now. Just take a rest. Take a rest before I force you into the rest of the story, kind of. So, yeah, I will definitely read the last book, but I will take a tiny little bit of a break. These books are very long, so I think it took me about 4 weeks almost to listen to this one, so almost a whole month. The audiobook still isn't great. I think I've gotten used to it a little bit, and I think it is a little bit better than the first book. So I hope the last book will also be like tolerable. I think if you know going in that the audiobooks are horrible, you can definitely survive. They're just old and not that great, and it would be about time to do a new version with like just someone else who does a better job, maybe. I think that's all I'm gonna say for the spoiler-free part, but I wanted to go into a couple of spoilers for all the people who have read the series already, just sharing some thoughts. So if you haven't read Matchup yet, then please use the chapters to jump ahead. You will get my spoiler-free thoughts on the final book, and if you have read the book, let's just discuss a couple of spoilers. Now, a lot happens in this book, and I don't even know where to begin, but I think the most interesting changes we see are within the character of Malta. Now, Malta in the first book is so insufferable, and some people were like, she gets worse in the second book, and I don't really see it. I think that Malta becomes much more of an interesting character. In the beginning, she is still quite insufferable, and there are a few scenes, like especially the one with Brashen, that made me so uncomfortable. But Brashen is a good guy. He's a good guy, so it worked out in the end. But Malta is still being very weird at the beginning of this book, and I think it is understandable. I remember that part of my teenage years when you think you're all grown up and you're really not. And you just don't believe people that you're not. So I do understand her as a character, but then I think once she shares the dream with Rain and the dragon kind of enters her thoughts, I think her development starting there is very, very interesting. And her last scenes with the satrap, where she puts him in his place and shows him that he has no power anymore in this scenario, it was glorious. And also I think the ball scene was very well done. The way that she behaved in that moment definitely shows that she has room to grow into a great woman. And what I love about her story is the way that Rain sees her, that he already knows the potential that she has, while all of her family is still really wrapped up in the way that she's just not great right now, but they don't really appreciate the potential in her. I really ship Rain and Malta. They're just so great together. I'm definitely intrigued to see where that goes now. But I really, really enjoyed their relationship and how that impacted Malta as a character as well. And I'm definitely intrigued to see where it goes from now, because now Malta has received all of these memories, so she's not really herself anymore, I would say. Now, similarly, Wintro. Wintro is a character that I definitely missed a little bit in this book. I feel like especially in the second half, we mostly see him from an outside perspective through Edda, and I just didn't really love that. I definitely missed reading Wintro's perspective. I think he was such a distinct character in the first book, definitely struggling a lot, but then now he falls in line with Kenneth, and I think we get the explanation of how that all happens through Edda, and I just really didn't understand that choice. I definitely missed having his perspective. And then at the end, it just gets so dramatic. I definitely was so afraid for him, because he frees She Who Remembers and is almost killed during that. And the way his relationship builds with Edda, I think is really great. The way that they learn from each other and they build this friendship, and the way that Edda is so desperate because she thinks he will die. It was very beautiful, and I'm also intrigued to see where that goes. But now Wintro again has all of these memories from She Who Remembers, so I'm definitely intrigued to see how that impacts him, if we will get more of his perspective again, and I'm especially intrigued to see how that will influence Vivacia, because now Wintro has all of these memories and he knows that Vivacia is dead. So I'm intrigued to see how that will change things because they are obviously connected, and so he can't really hide what has happened to him. And that is probably going to be very interesting. Now, talking about the life ships, I also thought it was so interesting when the sea serpents kind of destroyed one of the life ships. The way that was described, I was like, oh my god, like that was such a dramatic scene, and you kind of like figure out who the sea serpents are and who the life ships are during this book. There are so many like clues and you just can't piece it together. And so yeah, seeing them finally get the answers and understanding why what should have happened has never really happened. The one thing, talking about She Who Remembers, that I don't quite understand is who the others were and how they captured her. So I'm intrigued to see whether we will get any answers on that, because that seems like very much finished right now. So yeah, I'm not quite sure. I mean, she called them abominations, so what were they? But apart from that, like in the first book, when we first learn about the others and the serpents, for a while I thought they were the same thing. So it was interesting to see that they're not, but that the wisdom of the others was still connected to the sea serpents. In connection with that, I really love that we get the perspective from the Rain Wilds. So we see Rain's family more. We see the log, we learn about the dragon and how they are basically in this pupae state. I don't know. I feel a bit weird using like insect terminology that I'm not very familiar with for dragons, but whatever. But yeah, basically they are the serpents, then they get in their little cocoon, and that is the logs that the ships are made from. And so it was very interesting to learn about that. It was also interesting, I hope I understood that correctly, but they talked about how the Elderlings would make not little, but big figurines of dragons, and then the like artist would die, and that would bring the dragon to life for a short while, and they would like fly out, and that's basically the type of dragons that we saw with Fitz and Verity. So they weren't real dragons, and that's why they were all turned to stone, because they weren't real. They were these like figurines that the Elderlings had made. So I thought that was such an interesting like crossover as well, and a very interesting kind of answer we get, especially because I don't quite remember. I think it is Paragon who said that the dragons that were like in the first book, that they weren't dragons. So now we know. So yeah, it's just so interesting to get all of these answers in this book, and I found it like really fascinating and well thought through, and it just makes so much sense. I think there is a little bit of a spoiler in it, because when you know that the Rainwild Chronicles are about dragons, you obviously kind of know that the dragons will survive this and like get strengths and stuff. So that's a little bit sad actually. Like at first I didn't really connect these two series so much, but now I'm like, yeah, but like if there's dragons in the Rainwilds later on, then they have to get strength now. It's definitely so interesting. I also really enjoyed seeing the city of the Rainwilds people. The way that it's like this tree city, it was really cool. I really liked the description of that. And then also these like old palace things that were destroyed, very much giving like Pompeii. So yeah, I had such a good time with this. Althea's storyline, honestly, is developing in an interesting way, but then I feel like the other stuff was just so much more impactful that it is a little bit on the back burner. I definitely love that they got the Paragon back together and are sailing with him now and stuff like that. I'm intrigued to see how that ends, because Paragon was attacked by one of the sea serpents, and so he also got some memories back because of that. And yeah, it's just a lot is in motion. But as I said before, like right now, a lot of these characters are in places where I feel like they're safe for now. But I also know that what is in their future will not be so safe. So I am intrigued to see what happens. Also, a little bit worried what will happen to some of these characters. I'm very much intrigued to see whether we will see Kyle again in the next book, because it was honestly a reprieve not having him in this book. I definitely didn't mind that. I love Kefria's development as well, and if she will do the spy thing in the next book, I'm very much here for it. And I love Ronica. I'm intrigued to see what her journey holds. All of these great characters, definitely need to know what will happen to them. So I will talk to you once I have read the first half of Ship of Destiny. So I'm now halfway through Ship of Destiny, the last book in the Liveship Traders. These books are so big, so a lot has happened already in this book, and last night I was thinking about how I could even talk about this spoiler free, which is very, very difficult because these characters have gone such a long way already. And obviously some are still kind of on the same quest. So for example, Althea is still trying to get Vivacia back, and Kenneth is still trying to become the king of pirates. But at the same time, we have learned so much more about these characters that the roots to their dreams might have changed quite a bit. So yeah, it's like really hard to talk about. We get a mystical being in this last book that is more important. I must say that I'm a little bit frustrated by it because I just read another like book series with a similar being, with a similar character. I find this one even more frustrating in its arrogance. So yeah, I'm struggling a little bit. I'm feeling a little bit burned out with this trope, with this type of like mystical character. Then we also, yeah, still have a lot of like seafaring, a lot of the ships, a lot of the piracy is still going on, but we also get more into the nitty-gritty of some politics, and especially regarding the question of slavery as well, because in Bingtown it never was allowed, but it kind of like happened, and it's like a little bit difficult, but we get more exploration of that as well, and it's definitely going into an interesting direction with that, even though I would say it's not like the most fleshed out that you can deal with this topic, but I still think it is going into an interesting direction. It's like really, really hard to talk about this without spoilers. I think that some of these characters really are not recognizable from where they started. Like obviously, because Robin Hobb is such a master of character work, you see every step of the way from them, the being they were in the first book to where they're now in the third book, like almost at the end of the story. So I don't want to say that it doesn't make sense. It makes a lot of sense, but still some of these characters you wouldn't even recognize anymore. And I do enjoy that for the most part. So I can't really talk about that without spoilers, but there is one character in particular who had to go through a lot of like horrible things, and that changed them very drastically. And right now they're kind of stuck with a very obnoxious person, and I applaud this character for their development and the way they're dealing with things, and I'm so intrigued to see how their story ends. But as I said, I can't really tell you anything because of massive spoilers, and it's like really frustrating. So I don't want to sit here and steal your time by like saying things that are not really understandable because I have to try not to spoil anything. So maybe to wrap this little update up, we can still see what Robin Hobb is good at. That is her character work, that is her intermingling of these storylines, that is her incredible world building, and she's definitely building up the tension. And then plot-wise, I think what Robin Hobb just does really well is not fall into tropes. Her plots are always very unpredictable, and maybe only predictable in the sense that you know she will not go the route you would expect from like fantasy books. So, for example, you would think, oh my god, in this situation, now we're gonna get a big sea battle, but that doesn't happen. Like something else happens, but you don't get like this epic, amazing sea battle because that's just not Robin Hobb. So yeah, I'm really still enjoying it, but I'm also ready to be finished with the series. Like I think I've just been reading too many big fantasy series at a time right now. And so yeah, I'm definitely I'm getting to the point where I'm like I really like this, but it is coming to an end and I'm glad about that. So I guess that's all I'm gonna say for this halfway update. I know it isn't a good update, but we will talk again when I finish the series. I will give you my final thoughts, how much I liked it. I think, and this is very surprising to me, that overall I did enjoy the Farseer trilogy more than this. And I did not expect this. Like, I wasn't going into the realm of the Elderlings for the Farseer trilogy. I always wanted to get to this trilogy, but I think Farseer still is a little bit more my favorite. But we'll see. I'll let you know about that in the final update, and then we can also discuss some spoilers. But yeah, let's keep it short. I'll talk to you soon.
Beautiful. So you guys say looks love has something considered? It's not really like the main set, but it's interesting.
So we have come to the end of another very long journey through a book series, because yesterday I finished reading the Liveship Traders series. I finished reading Ship of Destiny, and I'm here to discuss and tell you all about it. In this final book, we definitely again go on a major journey with all of these characters. I found it so intriguing, like waiting for all the threads to come together and see some of the character reunions and just how they meet up again and how much they have changed and the things they need to talk about and stuff like that. I just really enjoyed that. I had a great time reading about all of it. I have come to love some of these characters. I will miss some of these characters, to be sure. And yeah, it was just overall a very good conclusion. I think in the way that Robin Hobb does conclusions, it's very masterful. Things start falling into place, things are revealed, and I think without it having this like super dramatic ending, it just all makes sense in a way, and I just really enjoyed that. So I would give this book 4.5 stars for that. But there are some things I really did not enjoy about this book, and that is mainly the way that sexual violence and sexual assault was handled in this final book. We already had a depiction of rape in the second book, which I also didn't love the way it was dealt with, basically, but it was fine in a way. But this time, I don't know, there's just something about 90s books, like fantasy books written by women, where they felt like they have to write in rape for some reason. And I think it had a lot to do with them trying to get a male readership to understand the horrors of it, maybe. I don't know. But then the representation and the way it is dealt with is just not healthy if you are a survivor and you're reading about this, because it is, yeah, it's just not well done. Like basically, because the scenes themselves are quite graphic, it can definitely be a big trigger. And then also the aftermath that is described can be very triggering, and especially because in this last book we do get a magical cure for the PTSD that the character is suffering from, and that I think is one of the most hurtful representations you can do for something like that. And so I really did not appreciate the way that Robin Hobb portrayed being a survivor in this case. Like, absolutely not. I think it's actually a disservice to people who survived sexual violence. But yeah, that's just something to keep in mind. I have this issue with every single 90s fantasy book written by a woman I've read so far. So if you know others where the representation is better, definitely let me know. That is like my major complaint, like something that I just can't look away from. And I actually thought about whether that would drag down the rating for me, because I think it is very, very important that we get good representation of what it is like to be a survivor of sexual violence. But in the end, I decided that this is, for me, mostly a fantasy story, and I can acknowledge that it was written like many years ago when the whole discourse was still very different in that regard. So I'm keeping it with a 4.5 stars. If I would rate it for that, it would probably be more like a 3-star. But yeah, take it with a grain of salt, basically, my rating. I think star ratings can be very hard like that, because as a fantasy story, I still think it is phenomenal. But as a story that represents things that happen in real life to people, it just really didn't do a great job. That's my 3 cents for that. Do with it whatever you will. And that's pretty much, I think, all I want to say about this final book, spoiler free, because it is very hard to talk about a final book in such a long series without spoilers. I think that it's a great conclusion, very satisfying, and in Robin Hobb fashion, she manages to bring it all together without it being like this huge battle at the end or something like that. And that is very refreshing, basically, with all of the other like fantasy books that we have out there. So next up, let's talk about a couple of spoilers. So for all of the people who have not read this series yet or not read the last book, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate that you took the time of your day to watch this video. I hope you have a great day. Don't forget to like this video and let me know in the comments whether you will now pick this series up or whether I have discouraged you somehow. So I would love to hear about that. And for all of the other people, let's talk about some spoilers. Where do I even start? Like, with these huge series, it's always so hard to see where to start. But just because I talked about the sexual violence representation in this book, let's start with Althea's storyline. And with this one, I think that Althea really wasn't that important for this last book, and I think she herself struggled with that quite a bit. I must say that overall, another thing I really didn't like about this, but it is hard to talk about spoiler free, is that in the end we do have this like coupling up of all of these characters, and all of our like strong female characters, they in the end end up still kind of under their respective men. Like, we don't see what happens to Kafria really. She is then the important political person, but we never see her actually do anything with that. We have Malta, who is like the queen to like rain, but for example, in that last scene with the hatching dragons, the cat is here by the way, with the dragons, it's only talking about how rain came to talk to the sea serpents when they were... what's happening? I love you. So yeah, when they talk about the like sea serpents on the shore, it only talks about him showing up and motivating them to do their cocoons and stuff. So yeah, I just really don't like that. And same with Althea, she's not the like captain of a ship in the end, she's just first mate on Brashen's ship. So even though this book like featured a lot of strong women, in the end they all end up with a man and like one step below the man. And I thought that was very sad because like this had a lot of potential, especially with Malta and this like whole queen thing, to portray like the strong women even more. So yeah, that was something that I struggled with a bit. But the biggest gripe for me still is the whole rape situation with Althea, the way that it was magically cured, like her PTSD that she suffered from that horrible thing that happened to her by Paragon. And especially because the perpetrator of it is part of Paragon, so for him to then like cure her of her PTSD, it just left a very bad taste in my mouth. And I was talking about that on Discord a little bit, that the way that nobody believed Althea and stuff like that, I just really struggled with that. And people were like, yeah, but it's like very realistic, and I get that, but sometimes I want my books to be optimistic and not realistic. And especially with a portrayal of something horrific like that, I always want books to give good examples, and I feel like in this book we only got like bad if realistic examples of how people react to something like that, which if women read this and this is already what they thought would happen, can just make them not come forward because they see, oh well, if I come forward with it, nobody will believe me. I see it in the media how people don't believe me, and so they keep it a secret for longer. So that's why I just wanted there to be at least one good example, and yeah, there just wasn't one, and that was really sad, and I think a missed opportunity. I didn't like that it happened at all, to be honest. I think it kind of, yeah, ruined the character of Kenneth, definitely, and the way that he then dies still being kind of a hero, and that not having any effect on his like name. That again, yeah, you might say this is like very realistic, but in a sense that was also very hurtful, that for him as the perpetrator it didn't really have any consequences. Even Edda in the end decides to still love him even though she knows what he has done, and she's like the only one who really believes Althea. So yeah, that was just overall not very great. And then again, I was worried after the whole like magical cure thing that Althea wouldn't even tell Brashen. She did in the end, but again, I also really didn't like the portrayal of that so much, because yeah, it basically ends with them being very intimate again, and I don't know, I just felt like a complete magical cure, the way that she suddenly wanted to be intimate again with Brashen after that has happened. And yeah, I think this could have been explored so much more and more positively, and I wish yeah, people would just stop using stuff like that in their fantasy books just as kind of like a weird plot device, or to show how horrible the situation was back then and still is in many regards. So yeah, I don't know, I just was so dissatisfied with that whole thing. Apart from that, there is a lot I loved about this book, especially the development of Malta as a character. I really enjoyed that, like seeing her learning to pull strings and to not be the little prat, but to really have her own best interest in mind and being smart about it. That was so great to see, and I did really enjoy that development, even though again I would have liked to see more of it in the end of the book. And I feel like as soon as she's reunited with Rain, it kind of started to fall flat a little bit and just fizzle out. I think I will still miss these characters quite a bit, and I'm intrigued to see whether we will see some of them again in later books, like especially in the Rainwild Chronicles. I could really imagine seeing Malta's younger brother Selden again there. We'll see. But since Rain and Malta are Elderlings now, they could still be alive in many years, so maybe we will see them again. We'll see. I'm very intrigued about that. What else do we have? I think that the whole Cyrilla storyline was also quite interesting. Again, she had these like horrible sexual violence things happen to her in the second book, and that has definitely influenced her. And at the beginning of this book, I really wanted to shake her and tell her to like get her shit together, because she was like running away from the alliances that would be helpful to her and hiding behind this like weird violent man again. And I liked that that was something that she realized in time as well and then changed. And so I think it was interesting to see, but also she didn't really get too much page time, so there wasn't like a lot of time to really explore what she felt and why she felt it. And her like alliances shifted quite a lot in this book, and it wasn't always super obvious why it was happening to me. So I think for the length of the book, that could have been done a little bit more as well. Now, I really don't want to talk about Kenneth because I feel like he's always been a dick, but in this book we find out how much of an awful, disgusting person he really can be. And yeah, I wasn't very happy with that. And I still wish it would have been done differently, and especially because I thought that this was the like sexual violence part was included because then Althea and Vivacia would find their way together again, and it was done in that way, but I just imagine it going very differently from there, that this would be the thing that seals his fate because Vivacia would recognize what he has done and then side with Althea, that did not happen, and that she would be like, well, I didn't really see anything, and the dragon who might have seen anything, she doesn't tell me, so I don't believe you, Althea. I just thought that was like so dumb. Honestly, I'm sorry. What can I say about that? I'm sorry, I'm still bitter about this. It's like really hard to think about all the other things that I loved about this because this is like the last thing we kind of experience with the book. I do still really love like the Vestrid women, especially what's the mother's name, Ronica. I really enjoyed her part in this story, the way that she doesn't give up, and she doesn't give up her like town and her way of living, and she's standing up against Cyrilla and trying to show her like an alternative way and stuff like that. I really enjoyed that. I did really enjoy just all of the seafaring things. I don't read a lot of books about like pirates and yeah, being on a boat and ships and stuff. So that was definitely very refreshing and very fun to read about, and it felt like Robin Hobb had like some understanding of how that would all work. And yeah, I loved Paragon's development. I think that the way it was explained in the end that Kenneth had actually died on the ship, but that Paragon wouldn't let him die and kind of revived him and stuff, that was the reason that Paragon was already awoken, basically, even though not 3 generations had died on his ship. How that was explained, I really enjoyed that, and how that also ended up causing his quote unquote madness. The way that he loved so much and so fiercely, and I think if we would have just focused on that and how Kenneth loved him back but just like was so afraid of loving again, that would have been just the thing that we deal with at the end. I would have preferred that so much more. And I did love Etta's development. I loved seeing her with Wintro, the way that they have this like friendship. The ending where they talked about the dancing, it was just so cute. And yeah, I can definitely see that they have this like slow burn, like growing romance together. And I definitely liked seeing that as well. And the one thing I'm still not quite sure about with Amber is that like she was literally only there to look for Wintro and tell him this like one sentence about him being the father of the child, like the social father and not the biological father, that is what matters. And it's like that's the only reason she was there for all of that. I think that is so weird. But yeah, fate works that way, I guess. But that was definitely also like a little bit like, really? Like, I mean, obviously she did so much on this whole journey, and so many things would not have worked without her, but I still think that this was like her goal, and just like, yeah, it was kind of funny. Like, it was really kind of funny. I thought that there would be more, and then that's all we get. I also think that they talked about like these prophet people, and they mentioned someone who's like very, very pale. And that obviously reminded me of The Fool, which I'm so intrigued to learn more about these prophets and where they come from and how Ember fits into all of that. So yeah, I'm intrigued to see who will pop up again in like later series for sure. I think that we probably won't say goodbye to all of these characters. So I am excited to continue reading in the realm of the Elderlings. Probably not this year. I think I will continue with the next trilogy next year. So much happened, you guys. So much happens in this book. But yeah, Kyle. I still need to talk about Kyle. It was so funny. Like, that they even brought him back was very interesting. I kind of love that he did not get humbled by his experience, that in the end he was still the same bitter, wild man that he was. And it was so funny because in the Discord chat I was like, I'm so intrigued to see the reunion of Kyle and Malta, and then I continued listening to the audiobook, and in the next scene he dies, and I'm like, okay, or he doesn't meet Malta again. And I guess for Kefria and Malta that was probably like healthy to not be confronted with him again. But at the same time, it would have been interesting. I definitely would have liked to see what Malta would make of him, especially because on her journey, she already starts to wonder whether her father really loved her the way she wants to be loved, as like an independent and strong young woman, or whether he just loved her for always saying what he wanted her to say and wearing pretty dresses and stuff. It was so interesting. It was definitely so interesting. So much going on. All of these characters. I definitely, as I said, I felt very satisfied with the ending of this book, even though I did not like love everything that happened, but I still think it was such an interesting journey we go on with these characters. We see so much of their development, and I hope that we will see some of them again in later books, and I will miss them. And yeah, they just feel like real people, and that is something that Robin Hobb does. I think I'm gonna leave it at that so the video isn't like 20 hours long, but definitely if you want, let me know in the comments what like your favorite characters or scenes from the series were. I would love to hear about that. If you spoil anything, mark it clearly as spoilers please, but I would love to discuss with you in the comments. And I hope you have a lovely day. Thanks for watching this probably very long video, and I will talk to you soon. Bye!